Hey, I'm Nick, and today I'm going to be taking you through how to replace your control bar on your North Navigator Control System. Now you may need this tutorial if for some reason you've damaged your bar, but rest assured we've got loads of spare parts to get you back on the water as soon as possible. One quick note, if you are running a 2021 or 2020 control system, the 2022 bar is still backwards compatible, so you can definitely use this as a spare part. I'm just going to run you through quickly what you're actually going to need in order to do this. First, obviously you're going to need your spare part, the control bar with leaders. These can be found on the website or at your retailer. The control system that you're going to replace the bar on, you'll need a little bit of rag, your Kite leash, a set of Allen keys, scissors, vice grips, and a bit of strong line. First thing you're going to need to do is unwrap your lines and lie them out flat. And remove the green flying lines from the bar leaders. So in order to do that, on this one, as an example, push the two loops together and pull the opposite ends of the loop, and then pull the green line through the loop of the bar leader. Now that you've disconnected your flying lines from the bar leader lines, we now need to look at disconnecting the main power lines as well. In order to do that though, we're going to need to first remove the trim line and then disconnect the swivel to pull it through. So I'll start with moving the cleat stopper ball. For this, you're going to need a 2.5mm Allen key just to remove this little grub screw in here. You don't actually need to remove it, just wind it back a little bit so that it's going to move along the elasticized trim line. So pull it back just enough to allow us to pull the knot from inside the trim handle. Pull that out, and then we've got to undo this knot so that we can pull off the trim handle. All right. This might be a little bit difficult. Okay, cool. So I've managed to get the knot undone. I'm going to pull the trim handle off and then pull the cleat stopper ball off. It may stick a little bit on this elasticized, this piece of elastic in here, but you just got to tug hard. Ugh. Okay, from there we can take the elasticized trim line out from the cleat and through the power ball as well. Now before I pull the elasticized trim line out of the power bracket, I'm gonna actually just put a mark on which side the trim line goes in through, because it's quite important that we make sure it goes in the same way. So in. Cool. Now that I've done that, I'm happy to pull that out. We're going to need to remove the swivel so that we can disconnect the power lines and completely remove the lines from the control system. So to do that, grab the swivel and pull it through until you expose the loop-to-loop connection. Then we want to undo this by pushing the two loops together. As you can see, it comes apart, and then pull the top of the loops apart from each other until you can pull the swivel back through that loop. Great. Then you want to get your piece of strong line and attach it to this loop here. with a good knot. Right. The other thing that I like to do is also tie my trim handle to the other end of the string so that I don't pull it fully through the multi-bore tubing. Cool. So I'm going to grab this line now and make sure this feeds in nicely and pull it right through until I expose the string. And then I'm going to undo that knot so that I can disconnect my power lines. Cool. Now that we've disconnected the lines, with the end of the strong string here, just as we did with the trim handle, I'm going to put another piece on the end of this to stop it falling back through. So for this, I'm just going to use the cleat stopper ball. Just tie a knot on there, good as gold. Okay, now what we need to do is actually remove this loop-to-loop connection. So in order to do that, the best technique that I've heard is to first tie a knot in here. I prefer to use a bowline, something that's going to be strong, give you a loop and hold really well. The bowline is really good because it comes undone really easily and it holds this good loop. So using your leash, attach it to something overhead that's really sturdy. Attach the loop into the leash. So we're going to use the leash to pull down on the cleat base, and that'll allow us to expose some of the landing line like this. But because there's so much tension on it, we're going to need to use the vice grips to stop that going back in. The problem with this is the vice grips with metal grips could do damage to the fibers within the rope. So that's where I'm going to use a rag to protect the rope. So pull down on the cleat base, put your rag around it, get some good tension, and I'm just going to attach that there. And that takes the tension of the ropes. All right, I'm going to disconnect that from the leash now to make it a little easier to work on. With the vice grip still attached, I want to push these loops together, and you should see this will help it come loose a lot easier. So I'll just start working these two loops apart until I can pull the elasticized trim line off. All right, I'll need to undo my loop now as well. All right, once you've undone your loop, you can pull that elasticized trim line out from the D-power mainline loops. Then your elasticized trim line is disconnected. We can store that for later. At this stage, we can take off the vice grips, and we'll have to disconnect this cleat stopper ball again, but we can take off the cleat base here. All right, that comes off just like that. Store that for later. And at this stage, we can carefully take the bar off the D-power mainline and reattach this to make sure our string doesn't fall through the D-power mainline multi-bore tubing. Okay, now that we've taken the bar off, we can remove that one and find our replacement bar that we're going to attach. Carefully take that off again and feed both lines through the main hole of the bar. I'm going to reattach this. I'm being a little bit finicky, but I've lost the string too many times. I'd rather not. Cool. Now that we've replaced the bar onto the D-Power mainline, we're going to go about reassembling the Navigator control system. First, what we need to do is reattach the cleat base to the top of the multi-bore tubing. Now, there is a bit of a trick with this cleat base, as there's actually two barrels that come through here. So we need to make sure that the double loops come through the longer barrel, which is closer to the cleat. At the same time, we need to pull this string through the shorter barrel to make sure there's no twists, and then we have to put the cleat on the multi-bore tubing the right way around. In order to get the two loops through the barrel here, not easy, so what I've done is I've gone ahead and got some string. I'm going to feed it through both of these loops, making sure to get all of the fibers, and then once again undo this. Okay, before I tie a knot in this, I'm going to feed this through the top barrel to make sure it goes through the longer one. This can be a little bit finicky, but make sure both strings come through the same way, like that. Now that I've got these through, I'm going to hold on to them, and then down the other barrel, I'm going to feed the single string. Just like that. Now that I've got the strings through, I'm going to tie a knot in both ends to make sure that they don't come out. Once again. Great. I'm going to use this knot and attach it to our leash again, and then use that to pull the cleat base down the strings, and you'll feel a bit of a clunk. So just before you pull the cleat base fully down, it's best to make sure that these two ropes are not twisted. I can see mine are all good, they look clear, so I'm going to pull that down onto the multi-bore tubing. At that stage, I should be able to see the two loops exposed at the top. Now that I have the two loops pulled through the cleat base, we need to reattach the elasticized trim line using a loop-to-loop connection. In order to do this, I'm going to disconnect it from the leash, and this string, I'm going to push this through the loop of the elasticized trim line and pull it down so that it rests on top of the cleat base. Then I'm going to reattach the loop or the string to the leash, and now I want to feed the tab through these double loops. The best way is to get a small Allen key. This is a 2.5mm. Put a little bit of pressure on that cleat base and then push this through both loops. I find a little bit of spinning tends to help, and then pull down on on the Allen key to expose a little bit of a gap between there. That just makes it a little bit easier to feed that tab through and push it through that gap so that you can pull it through. Now take the Allen key out and pull it until that end goes through. Awesome. That's the hard part done. Now we can move on to the small reassembly bits. We're going to go ahead and reattach the landing line and swivel. In order to do this, we're going to need to get those power lines back, and we'll need to attach it to the string that's through the multi-bore tubing. Disconnect that cleat stopper ball and put a little knot in here. All right, now you want to slowly feed this in, making sure it doesn't get stuck anywhere, and also pulling this string from the other end. I want to get to the stage where I've exposed this loop so that I can reattach the landing line there. Disconnect this knot. Now that we have that loop exposed, we need to create a loop-to-loop connection between the power line and the landing line. First, push the loop of the power line through the loop of the landing line, and then get the other end of the landing line, get the swivel, and push this through the loop of the power line. Pull that tight, and then watch that come through as we pull this. Make sure it doesn't catch anywhere. Now we want to reinstall the trim system. At this stage we want to grab the power bracket, and it's really helpful that we've put this little mark on here because it's quite critical which way round this goes. So on this I've marked in, so I know it goes in this way, just like that. Now that we've reinstalled the power bracket, we need to reattach the trim line, the elasticized trim line, through the cleat. That should sit just like that. And then we can go ahead and put the cleat stopper ball back on the elasticized trim line as well. Feed that through. And we've got to pull it past the elastic, which can be a little bit hard. Oh, yeah. And then attach the trim handle as well. Pull the rope through to give yourself enough room to tie a figure 8 knot. That should be nice and close to the end of the elasticized trim line to make sure that it's hidden in the trim handle as best as possible when we pull it back through. Great. With the trim handle now back on, we want to position the cleat stopper ball. It needs to be just above the small piece of elastic on there, which allows the trim handle enough room to move. Then we get our 2.5mm Allen key, and using the Allen key, tighten up that little grub screw in the cleat stopper ball so it's past flush, so it doesn't stick out, and holds that in place like that. So that shouldn't move now. Now we're nearly there. Last couple of things to do is get rid of the string. We can cut that and pull it out of the loop-to-loop connection. And the last thing to do is just to replace your flying lines. So I've got a demo short piece of flying line here that I'm going to use for the loop-to-loop connection. All you need to do is push one loop through the other as we've done before, and then get the other end of your flying line, push it through this loop and pull them tight. And that should look just like a reef knot. So that's how you replace the control bar on your North Navigator Control System. I understand that's quite an in-depth tutorial, so if you do have any questions or queries, please hit up our customer services team at northkb.com or drop a comment below. I'm sure we can get you sorted and back out on the water ASAP. A quick safety note, when replacing a part like this that deals with the safety system, It's super critical to get out and do a dry run before you get out on the water. Make sure your flag out runs smoothly, make sure there are no twists in your lines. Just be safe.